Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go, man. Hunt the ball. Let's go, family on 3. 1, 2, 3, family.
Hello, football family. Welcome into Huddle It Up Films, continuing our position review series, second show on the cornerbacks. Pleased to have Ken McKusick with me for this one because Ravens are obviously very deep in the secondary. And Ken, the first show we talked about the veterans with Marlowe, Marcus, Kyle Fuller, and we threw Brandon Stevens in there because we expect him to play in some form or fashion a bunch of snaps. So I had to bring Ken on to talk about the four other corners that we have. Hybrid defenders, maybe they see some time at safety, some of these guys, and just talk about them as players and what their chances are to make the roster. So Ken, thank you so much for coming back on. I appreciate it. We did the tight end show together. That was a lot of fun. And, I think we jinxed Isaiah Likely because I had some questions about him. I think you like him a lot better as me as a prospect. Now Isaiah Likely is just popping up all over the reports.
It's good to see. Of course, there's always camp darlings, but likely in terms of what he's doing and how he's making heads turn is certainly a good news.
So Ken, what is going on over at Film Study Baltimore? If somebody doesn't know, Ken, of course, Film Study Ravens is his Twitter right there. He has the website Film Study Baltimore, which will be linked below. And if you haven't checked up on Ken in a while, go over and check it out. But what's been going on over there, Ken?
Mostly we've been doing an expectations series, which has been a lot of fun. 2 players at a time, working through pretty much more than the 53 even. So just about any player you'd want to see who's even got a realistic chance for the roster is in that group. A couple guys were not included, but I think most people understand why. Derek Wolfe, for example, was one player who was not included, but life goes on. We also did a series on the evolution of the game that I think was really entertaining, I know, to talk about, but it was a nice topic maybe to listen to as well about the various facets of the game and how they've changed. But it's just the kind of thing I'm looking for when people come to me for with an idea for a show, and I loved having Colt Scardina do it with me.
Okay. See, the game always changes, Ken. If you don't evolve with the game will pass you by really quick. And you always have to be forward thinking. The Ravens were kind of lucky as fans that they are forward thinking. We have some fans don't like it. Some fans love it. But one thing that you can give credit for the Ravens for, they're always thinking ahead. They're trying to plan for the now and for the future. So we're lucky as fans. Like, it's a very interesting team to follow. For all of Greg Roman's stuff and all the talk about him, like, I can say that I studied every single play of that 2019, 2020 running game, and hopefully 2022 running game. Just really unique the way we use our personnel. So Ken, I wanted to ask about the DBs though. Get right into it. The Ravens have a lot of talent here. We talked about 4 guys on a previous show. We're talking about another 4 guys tonight. So my first question to you is, very, very simple. Looks like we're going to keep 5 safeties if everybody's healthy. Knock on wood, we have good problems to have. How many spots are there for corners? Like, can we keep 6? How many of these guys have a chance to make the team?
Well, they have kept 7 previously, but I think 6 is going to be the top end. And if you first of all, you can start with a couple of basic precepts about roster construction. You're going to have 3 specialists. That cuts you to 50 on the roster. Then you're going to have a 25-25 split between offense and defense. And no matter how many times people talk about it, that ain't changing. It'll always be 25-25. Offensive coordinators scream really loudly if they get cut by a person and the defense effectively gets 2 more than them. It's just, it's much more difficult for them to operate. So it'll be 25-25. And then if you look by position where the Ravens have got people, edge maybe a position now with Ferguson no longer with us, that they may keep just 4 on the defensive line. I think it's likely they'll keep 5. That would be 9 inside linebackers. They might only have 3, but they probably will have 4. And it depends kind of how you tag Tony Jefferson, that group. I still think of him as a safety, but if you think of him as a linebacker, that's fine too. But that might be a spot where you get the extra player. And then the rest of them are going to be in the secondary. And I think that the most likely number that they'll end up with in the secondary is 6. Mostly at cornerback, is 6. With 5 safeties. And then Brandon Stevens, of course, I count him among the corners that they'll keep and not among the safeties.
Yes, for the purpose of this show, I counted Brandon Stevens as a corner. And I mean, that's where his playing time opportunity, I believe, is going to be with just the sheer depth that we have at safety, unless something movement happens with Chuck Clark, or I don't see it. I think that the Ravens see Brandon Stevens as an outside corner and want to develop him there. So that's just my own personal thoughts, and I would like to see them allow players to settle in at one spot if they can. What I like about this group, Ken, is there's a mix of skill sets. And the first two guys that we'll talk about tonight were drafted by the Ravens, and they're very different corners. The first guy I want to talk about, Jalyn Armour-Davis, 4th-round pick. Just to set you up here, Ken, he's 6'1", ran a 4.39 is the time I had for him. He was only a 1-year starter. He got hurt when he came in as a freshman, kind of rode the bench for a couple of years in deep Alabama program. Came on, missed 2 games, played in 11, but had 3 interceptions in those 11 games. So good production from him. And I see a lot of comparisons to Anthony Averett. And Ken, whenever I see a comparison, I kind of I want to challenge it in some way, because no two players are exactly alike. But I think the Averett comparison is a good one, because Jalyn Armour-Davis is a little taller, but they're both really fast. And what I question about both of them is their change of directions. I don't see a slot corner in either one of them. And the Ravens were really hesitant to put Averett in the slot. He pretty much tried to keep him on the outside. So what do you have on Jalyn Armour-Davis? However you want to start us off here, Ken.
So, I agree. The comp to Averett is a pretty good one. And even Averett went through some times where the Ravens had tremendous need at slot corner. Tavon was not always healthy. They had times where they needed the extra slot corner, and he wasn't it. They'd move Marlon Humphrey to the slot and have him play on the outside. He is similar to Armour-Davis in a fair number of ways. Armour-Davis has much less college experience, but Armour-Davis is a guy who, if there is a knock on him, it's not only change of direction, which can be a problem, but it would be how he mirrors the receiver at the top of the route, how quickly he shifts to identify, diagnose that route, make his read, and then and play that read. I think he's got some of that. We watched a lot of that with Averett in the game against the Colts last year, of him really getting torched by receivers who are very average in terms of their abilities. Michael Pittman's good, but Pascal is just below average NFL receiver, and they had some other guys there as well. I'm trying to remember who else was running routes against him, but any sort of wiggle at the top of the route he was biting on. And that's the kind of thing that gets you in a lot of trouble in the film room for the next week with that next offensive coordinator.
And I think Averett himself improved in that area. In a number of areas, but he did improve in that area. But yes, I saw the same thing from Armour-Davis. I call it flat-footed. Gets called flat-footed a few times. I saw. Seems like it takes him a little bit longer to open his hips up and to change directions. So those are the areas of opportunities. That said, Ken, I saw him with his makeup speed, where he would get beat. And, he's listed as a 4.39, but it seems like when he gets beat, he runs a 4.2. Like he is just screaming towards the ball to make up for his mistake or where he lost the receiver. So I do see, obviously, he's, a 4th-round pick. He's going to make the team. But is this someone, do you agree with me? You see him as just strictly an outside corner then?
Strictly an outside corner. If everything is perfect, expectations being what expectations can be, I'd hope that he gets some playing time this year, maybe similar to what Averett got as a rookie. If he could get somewhere close to 100 snaps, I think that would be good. In fact, it could be great, because it could mean the Ravens' other outside corners are holding up very well. And if he could get about 100 snaps of rotational play, of get in at the end of the game play when the Ravens hopefully have a big lead as opposed to the opponents, and just have a little bit of experience from that way, I would think that'd be good. And then he could be in position to be the starting corner in 2023 if Marcus Peters is not extended.
And I wanted to ask you about Peters and how it relates to Jalyn Armour-Davis, and I'm going to throw Brandon Stevens in there as the two next men up, as I see it, outside corner. Do you have any kind of feel for if Marcus is slow getting started, maybe he needs a month off, or maybe, the Ravens are ahead in some games and they're able to take Peters out? Between Jalyn Armour-Davis and Brandon Stevens, how do you see that go? Is that going to be a situation where Armour-Davis is going to have to clearly be better than Stevens because, Stevens is a year ahead of him in experience? Or how compare Armour-Davis to Stevens, if you could?
Yeah, legitimate question. Stevens not as fast, much more physical player. Certainly has that outside corner physicality you like. Armour-Davis has some of that too. He certainly has the size for it. I just see Stevens, weighing over 200 pounds or very close to it at least, as being somebody who is going to be able to press a little bit better when he wants to. Going to be able to force a receiver to the sideline. Hopefully, we see a little Ike Taylor and Jimmy Smith in him in terms of of big physical outside corners who could do that. It's a legitimate question. The need, you have a need to identify what both players can do if Marcus Peters isn't going to be here in 23. So you really want to be sure that you get a read on both of them. Obviously, practice and how they do in the preseason is going to probably define who gets the first chance on the outside. Let me just say this. I certainly hope it's not Fuller. That I think would be not the correct way to approach the franchise in terms of having him be the first guy up, even on the outside where he's more comfortable. He's not a slot corner. I think we know that for starters, but he looked bad in the slot in Denver last year. Frankly, very mysterious signing in terms of wanting a veteran there. But this year at cornerback, if there's any missed time, the Ravens need to use that productively to figure out what they have in both of these players, in Armour-Davis and Stevens. And if they don't, I'll be upset about that.
Well, I agree, because Kyle Fuller obviously is a veteran, older player, brings some steadiness to the room. But, when you're preparing for the future, you're hoping that either Armour-Davis or Brandon Stevens, someone else can step up on the outside. So I do agree with you there. Ken, you're going to cause me to go back and watch Kyle Fuller in the slot, because maybe it was just beat writer fluff. And you know how beat writers can be very kind to their players. But, we watched Hollywood Brown pretty much take it to Fuller in week 4 last year. And then Fuller, of course, was benched, came back, and all the reports that I had saw was, well, he did pretty good in the slot. When he came back, he played better. But I agree with you, Ken. He spent his whole career pretty much as a left cornerback. So yes, it would be a great sign to see Armour-Davis out there in the preseason, making plays, matching up, hopefully give him some experience, and just see what we have in this young man, both him and Stevens, and let them kind of battle it out for next man up. Now, could you see a scenario in which Brandon Stevens is Marlon Humphrey's direct backup on that weak side, one-on-one? Because like you said, Stevens is really a more physical player, bump press at the line, and have Jalyn Armour-Davis, be Marcus Peters is direct backup. In other words, not have a next man up, but just have a next man up on each side.
It's an interesting way to do it. I don't know if we've normally seen that be the case. Your first man off the bench, somebody has to be flexible. Whether that's, honestly, the guy who ends up being the flexible guy all the time is Humphrey for the Ravens, because he can play anywhere and still be pretty good. Even if you move to the slot, as we've seen, he's been good there. It's just, I think you get the most out of him if he's on the outside. I think maybe you get the most out of him on this Ravens team with him being at right cornerback, given that Marcus Peters seems to like that to play that shoulder. He seems to like to play the right side, the quarterback's eyes on the front side. There's just reasons why you want your primary interceptor over there on that side of the field too. But yeah, I don't think it would be really likely that they would do that. But you never know. If they're practicing and one's practicing at left corner, one's practicing at right corner with the second team unit, and then there's an injury, they may use that as the excuse to play one over the other when an injury occurs.
Yeah, I could see that. Just let them get comfortable and say, Armour-Davis, okay, we're going to put you over here, next to, working in combinations like Marcus does, and being able to read the field and not be all pressed up, and have as much pressure on you. I think there's a lot of pressure on any corner that plays on the right side mostly, and really is out there kind of on an island. So I could see Stevens being that guy who does that. Maybe Armour-Davis more of a Marcus Peters backup. And of course, does Kyle Fuller fit in? So a lot of question marks. We're just trying to comb through scenarios. Now, Armour-Davis was selected early in that 4th round. He might have been the first pick. Was he I don't want to say anything out the turn.
Second, and then him.
Okay, and then later, in the round, we picked another corner, Damarion Williams out of Houston. going to call him Pepe. Everybody calls him Pepe. Seems like a nice, fun name. So I'm going to call him Pepe. Pepe Williams, 4th-round corner out of Houston. Now, Ken, I was disappointed in my draft evaluation. You know how much pride I take in this because Damarion Williams did not come up in any of these like top 15 guys. And I rely on outsiders to make my list of guys to study because I can't study everybody. So I didn't look at Damarion Williams. He was the one player who wasn't on my board that we drafted. And then I went back and looked at him, and I'm like, you know what? This kid, I don't know why I didn't see him when I was looking at Marcus Jones, who was his teammate that I was, enamored with. He kind of has some feistiness to his game, Ken. I just want to talk about his play style at first before we get into strength or weaknesses. But this is a guy to me that looks like he belongs. Like he is a leader. He is fearless. His tackle numbers show it. He'll miss some tackles, but I mean, he is a good tackler as well, making tackles that other people wouldn't get to. Sheer 1-2. He's got some dog in him. And then we see these clips coming out of training camp where he is no wallflower. He comes out and he looks like he's Damarion Williams from day one, like senior in college, rookie in the NFL. Man, his confidence level kind of speaks to me. So I liked him from an intangible standpoint. But Ken, if you want to touch on any of those things and take us away on Pepe Williams.
Yeah, you hit on a lot of it right there, but outstanding downhill player. I think we're really going to like what he brings in the run game. I think we're really going to like what he may be able to do as a pass rusher when they choose to do that with him. And the Ravens have some options. They always like to rush the slot, or always have in the past. We'll see if that changes under McDonald. But the change of direction is the main thing. And he's, I think it's fair to say it's not all speed with him, but he probably reads leverage a little bit better and is able to judge when that whip is coming. You need to have a lot of that. I mean, there's so many not fast, but quick twitch slot guys in this league now. A lot of the slot receivers are frankly, not to raciify this, but they're slower white guys. They're Edelman and Welker and guys like that who just in straight line speed wouldn't be, keeping
not
track,
winning
keeping up with
100,
anybody else.
not winning a 100-yard dash.
No,
right.
No, but they are very, very good at beating the other guy, reading their leverage well off the line of scrimmage. If sometimes they have option routes and they can really make a slot corner look bad under those circumstances. But a lot of times they have a particular route and they know how they need to sell it, and they're just exceptionally good at doing it. They can make it look 2 or 3 different ways to that slot corner in terms of what they're doing. So I think Pepe is a guy who's going to play his reads. I expect him to get burned some in terms of how it's going. I think one of the important things coming out of this year will be, first of all, does he win the job, right? Because it's possible. It's him and Ardarius Washington, I think, are the two who we'll see really competing for that slot job. I really hope it is not Fuller again. I don't think that's the right move organizationally. I don't think it makes sense. So I think it'll be one of those two guys. And you're talking about, again, a first and a second-year player, kind of like on the outside with Stevens and Armour-Davis, a first and a second-year player. You're trying to figure out what you have. If you figure out you have something special with Pepe, or you figure out you have something special with Ardarius, it's 3 or 4 years of cost-controlled value play that you just love to have. So great chance, and I certainly hope those are the two in competition for it. One of the things I really want to see from Pepe in this first year is that divisionally there is a lot of usage of bunch formation, and
yes.
A lot of pick and rub stuff, and he's got to be able to learn how to negotiate that. We have safeties that I think will be good at it. We have, but it requires a lot of understanding of the proper leverage to play, what your assignment is on as they switch, cross each other, as they move off the line of scrimmage. You got to know that and instantaneously know where you're going because of it. Our inside linebackers were not able to handle that. That gave them a lot of trouble. But Pepe, I think, will be a rock solid player, and I hope that when Clark is in there at safety, he shows a lot of what he did in 2019 in terms of his ability to negotiate that. So I think there are opportunities, and I think that's one of the areas that the Ravens have traditionally had a lot of trouble with Kansas City, with Pittsburgh in particular, who run a lot of those formations.
Yeah, that's a great point, Ken. I'm hoping Kyle Hamilton can help with that too, with his length and aggressiveness and just patience that he shows on the field to be able to navigate that. But yeah, as a regard to Pepe Williams, just to paint a picture for fans out there, 5'10", 182. He ran a 4.53, and his shuttle and 3-cone were okay. But what I saw was a player that I wouldn't have thought ran a 4.53. Like,
Right.
I think he's a little bit slower in his long speed. I think those numbers are deceiving. And his shuttle and 3-cone were just okay in the good range. But I think he's quicker than that. I think he's very quick player. Maybe that has to do with his football brain and this and that. But I do think that he is quick enough physically. Ken, what do you have to add on that?
I mean, in terms of I do agree. In terms of the long speed, 4.53 is already kind of slow for long speed for a slot corner. For an outside corner, it would be really slow. But what his 3-cone was not special, and I would look at that and say that's a problem. But then I didn't look at him before the draft. After the draft, when I saw him, I saw a guy who makes his reads quicker than that. And that's what I like about him more than any kind of speed component. Is his reads are quick, and that probably means his reading of leverage is good. And I can't always tell exactly how they're making a read quickly. Sometimes I'd have to guess. Somebody who really has a great receiving background or a great background playing slot corner might be able to do that better than me. But I'll tell you, I know quickness when I see it in terms of how quickly somebody takes their first step to react to the first step of the opponent. And, some of it's leverage based at least.
Yes. And, I think that those, the 3-cone and the shuttle drills can be deceiving, just like the 40-yard dash. I mean, there's a timing to it and a number of steps and a practice thing. So I do look at those numbers as, I take everything into consideration, Ken. If you're disregarding any information, I think you're shorting yourself. You want to consider everything. But yeah, I would challenge his 3-cone and shuttle time being, he looks like an above average quickness, to me, an NFL level caliber, quick player on the NFL level. So I love that about him. I mentioned his aggressiveness, 9 PBUs last year too. So that's some good production. I think it was only 1 pick, 1 interception, but 9 pass breakups, very aggressive, very active, short armed guy, Ken. So again, he's not going to play on the outside. He's got speed limitations. He's got size limitations. He's got length limitations, but unlike Armour-Davis, I like how the Ravens attacked this. They went and they got themselves a nice traditional press man corner from a big university, Alabama in the SEC. They've had a lot of luck. And then later in that round, they said, look, we got a guy that can handle quicker slot receivers. So there's not a lot of question marks on where these guys will play. And I agree with you, Ken. I think his chance to open the season in some of these nickel packages, depending on the team, if they have a receiver that they like to put in the slot, like you said, who is quick, that Damarion Williams may clearly be the best player to handle that, unless you want to mess with Marlon and move him all around.
Yeah, I don't really want to do that. And Ardarius Washington, actually a pretty similar player to Williams in a lot of ways. Certainly size-wise, he's even smaller, tougher in some ways, or very tough in some ways. Let's not say tougher, because we don't really know about Damarion yet, I don't think. But certainly a guy who has already been projected as a guy who can play safety or cover at least half the field high, or play in the slot. And a lot of those similar downhill comparisons are made. He was a guy the Ravens really went out to spend some money on as a UDFA last year. So I don't think they're ready to give up on him yet after what he did in his first year. But he's in competition for the spot, and Pepe is a fine competition. It'll be one of the really fun ones to watch at camp.
So let's talk about Ardarius then. Undrafted free agent, you mentioned, I believe he was one of the higher priced free agents. I mean, Ken, he was, on my board, I looked at him as like a, 4th round, 5th round guy. And, what I always say about Ardarius is he is a great football player. Mm-hmm. They just, to separate that out, it's not saying he's an NFL superstar. I'm talking about at the game of football, he is great at it. His limitations come from size and speed, 5'8", ran a 4.62. His shuttle was really good, a 4.1 shuttle. He was only active for 3 games last year, Ken. Played 7 defensive snaps is all I found. Had some action on special teams, but really, really limited So it's tough to know what you have in Ardarius. Now, he did play in the preseason. I believe he had an interception or made a play in the preseason, a couple of plays in preseason. So that was good to see. Ken, I'm not sure if you can answer this. If you can't, that's fine. But I know you were out at camp all last year. I don't know if there's any constraints or what time limits, but what could you tell us? I'll just leave it open. What could you tell us about what you saw from Ardarius at practice last year?
Yeah, I don't know that there's a lot I can recall specifically. I mean, it's out there. We recorded daily and talked about, one of the things you do a lot is talk about how the corners are mirroring their assignments in 7-on-7 and things like that. So you have more opportunity to watch those kind of matchups than a lot of the line play in particular, a lot of the pass rush and how that's working. But Washington really impressed me in the preseason, and I don't have it right in front of me, but it's out there on my website if anyone wants to go see it. I give grades after every single game on a +1 to +3 scale, and Washington was one of the higher rated Ravens of the entire preseason. I know Jalen Ferguson also had a big preseason, of course, just to temper that. So it can work out. I was actually a little surprised that he didn't see time last year. With the Ravens' need being what it was, you thought they'd figure out how to get him in there. But I guess he was also one of the ones that got hurt, and I'm trying to remember when he got hurt for the last time in the year.
Well, when I was looking at his game log, Ken, I don't think he played after like week 8, 9, something like that.
It then.
So his three games came earlier in the first half of the season. But yes, it would have been. I mean, it's kind of missed opportunity, Ken. We were playing guys like Robert Jackson. And guys that why not just you want to see Ardarius in those situations just to see what he has. But I loved him in college as a safety, and maybe last year was kind of like a red shirt for him, saying, okay, look, you're a corner. We're going to have to really refine your technique here. We're going to have to reset your eyes, teach you the little ins and outs of the position and that kind of thing. Let's just take a deep breath, take a year. We don't like you at free safety. We want a taller, faster. We want an impact player at free safety here in Baltimore. We're going to switch you to slot corner. And maybe last year was just kind of like a red shirt for Ardarius. I think that he does have the opportunity, like you said, with Pepe, one of those guys to just take that job and run. And I would like to see one of those guys just to take that job and run with it. It'd be good. It'd be great if both players were playing well. But for me, it would be better if one guy is just so undeniably, ready to play in the NFL, and the Ravens can count on them for week 1.
Right. I think I'd rather have a 9 and a 6 than 2 8s.
There you go.
If you're talking about it that way, but it's with injuries and the way they happen, boy, 2 8s is looking pretty good to me right now. It's how the Ravens need the slot covered. I'd like them to have it without Humphrey being there. So. I'd really like them to have it without Fuller being there. So if they could get 2 8s from their from those guys in terms of readiness, that'd be terrific.
Well, when it comes to looks, Ken, I feel like we're a 10, 5 and a 5, but either way, we add up to a 10 here. But yes, Ardarius, I'm glad to hear the positive reports of practice. Your highest graded guy, and I enjoyed listening to you last preseason. I believe you had Kyle Barber with you doing the training camp reports, and he just seemed like a guy that you were bringing up all the time. And bringing him up, and I know that you're not supposed to disclose information, but we were all looking at him as a safety and wondering how he was going to fit in, and it became pretty clear. And then obviously the Ravens, in the preseason games, we saw Ardarius in the slot closer to the line of scrimmage. Both him and Pepe, though, I think are very good at leverage, reading. I think they're both very willing tacklers. I think there is a lot of similarities between Pepe Williams and Ardarius.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. Certainly, in terms of physical limitations, they're similar there too. It really comes down to one guy, if he's a little better at figuring out what that slot receiver is going to do a little quicker. That's what's going to be deciding this. It won't be the raw physical tools in either case that decide it for these guys.
So, Ken, if my numbers are right here, and we're talking about we're going to keep 6 cornerbacks at the most, Marlon 1, Marcus 2, Brandon Stevens 3. You imagine Kyle Fuller's going to make the team. That's 4. We get before Jalyn Armour-Davis 5. Okay, so Pepe Williams and Ardarius, one of them is 6, one of them is 7. If we're in pecking order here, is this a spot where the Ravens could play some kind of roster games to be able to protect either one of these guys. What do you think the chances of Ardarius getting poached off the roster if we can't protect him in some way, and he's behind Pepe Williams, of course?
High probability of a roster game. High probability. So you have a lot of players on the team: Tony Jefferson, Brent Urban, veterans who you can easily make a handshake deal with, who are making the vet minimum. They'll be happy to take a seat for that initial 53-man roster, be back for week 1, and allow you to slip a guy into non-season ending IR by having him on your initial roster. They have limited the rules. Got a pod coming up on that this year that's going to make it a little more difficult. I think it's almost aimed at what the Ravens have done in past years to try and slip a lot of guys through, but I think the chance is very high. And if you're talking about the extended roster there to include the people that are on IR, you're really talking about a 56 or 57 man roster probably. And yeah, I think very, very high probability that Washington makes the 56 or the 57. And I don't think there's any doubt that Pepe makes the 56 or 57, but you got a lot of chance for that extra player to make it. There's other players like Broderick Washington who might end up between 54 and 57 as well. So, the Ravens are fairly deep.
I don't like hearing that about Broderick and defensive line either. It's like you just want depth anywhere. That's why, Ken and I last year we're hoping we kept 26 on defense and 24 on offense because, the wide receivers, don't get as much action on the offense. You play running back games. You can play a lot of games on offense too, but defense is so rotational, Ken. You don't have the same 5 offensive linemen like you had to on offense playing every snap. It's so rotational that I like having those pieces. So, Ken, just to break it down, what you're saying is, okay, Brent Urban, handshake. Look, buddy, we're going to cut you and sign you tomorrow, and we're going to place somebody like Ardarius on IR to start the season, and then bring Brent Urban back once you place Ardarius on IR. That's kind of, to simplify it, that's kind of what you're thinking there.
Yeah, I mean, and you don't have to map those in any particular way, but when you have another defensive lineman that you want to slip onto the roster, it makes it a little bit easier just in case some other team comes in and buys a player like Urban away from you. It could happen. It never really does. Players make their handshake deals. They don't want to break them. And, players are happy playing somewhere. They're happy living somewhere, generally speaking. So the amount of money they would need in order to screw over a team that they will never play for again, probably because they've broken their handshake deal, is usually going to have to be pretty high. So would they do it for $1 million? Probably. Would they do it for $150,000? Probably not.
Gotcha. Yeah, I just like to simplify things because the roster can be so complicated, how to play those games. So I was just, painting the scenario out there and for anybody that was wondering. So the last player we're going to talk about tonight, Kevon Seymour. He doesn't fit in with the rest of the players we've talked about because he's a little bit older. He was drafted in 2016, a 6th round pick. I believe the Ravens are his 4th team. He was surprising to me, Ken. The first signing of the offseason was Kevon Seymour. And then the part that kind of got me on this is when I'm looking at the contract, there's no guarantees. So I'm wondering why Kevon would jump at the chance to sign so early and not be able to be cut and left without a job, a week before the season starts. This may be a guy that the Ravens say, look, we're going to try to keep you around on this team. We don't expect you to make the 53-man roster. We're going to restock the cornerback room, but we like how you played against the Green Bay Packers. We like what you did, helping out with Devontae Adams in that game. Like, I think Kevon Seymour brings some professional qualities, a 6-foot corner who played inside and outside. He's not a superstar. He's the guy that's trying to stick around in the league. But when I hear people talk about him, they kind of just toss him away. And I do think that he has, and for me, though, I disagree. I think that he could have some value to this team if the injuries start mounting up in the secondary like they tend to do.
Well, I mean, he definitely was. The initial signing, I think, no doubt about, was depth. I don't think they signed him saying, we hope you're our 5th or 6th cornerback this year, because if they did, that would have been very bad. And then there's nothing about the way they drafted or signed Fuller or anything else that says that they really wanted to do that. They signed Fuller for about $3 million. I don't know how much guaranteed money he has in there, but it's some. So they would, lose. They didn't sign Fuller to cut him. Okay, with
right.
Kevon Seymour, I think Seymour's at the end of the road in his NFL career, and it's not even like a fork in the road. It's like you've got a truck stop that you can wait here for the road to be fixed, and maybe it gets fixed and maybe it doesn't. And to work on that metaphor a little bit, the Ravens are saying, look, there's no other demand for your services around. There isn't another team out there who's going to be crying for Kevon Seymour. So here's what we'll do. We'll bring you in. You'll get your time during the preseason. You'll build up some film, so you're guaranteed of having preseason snaps by coming here. And then you'll be on our practice squad and you'll be available. You'll be available to us if you're the right guy. You'll be available to other teams if other teams have depth issues. And you'll be one of the players that people would look at week to week as the injuries occur in the NFL. And other teams are a little shorter. They may get to you first, or we may, but we're comfortable with the arrangement. And you know who you are, and we know who the Baltimore Ravens secondary is, and hopefully it works out for both of us.
So not bad for an eighth cornerback on the roster. And of course, some of these undrafted guys or guys may pop up from anywhere, but it just speaks to how deep of a room it is. There's not much for me to add on Kevon. I don't think we need to go on a really long breakdown. But I would just say a veteran corner I saw some good instincts from him last year, a good head on his shoulders. I noticed picking up routes when we were playing zone that he was very disciplined in that. And he made a couple of plays when the ball was, obviously they were targeting us like mad last year with our pass defense. But again, he didn't stick out to me as man, get this guy out of here, like some of the other DBs that we were cycling through last year. So I wanted to make sure that I included him on this cornerback series, Ken, and just talked about him a little bit because I like having veterans that, he can patch you up for a week or two if you really, really needed it and things were getting rough towards the end of the season. But let's face it, if Kevon Seymour is playing a significant number of snaps for the Ravens this year, something went way left for us. So
yeah, absolutely. I mean, Daryl Worley was an older guy as well who was around the team. Actually, he's still only 27 years old, but seems like he's been around the entire NFL as well in terms of playing for a lot of different teams. He's played for, I guess, 6 different teams now. Daryl Worley has. So he got some snaps last year. The guy that was it's disappointing that they couldn't, that he wasn't a guy that the Ravens wanted to keep around is Chris Westry. He would have been a guy, I think he has the physical tools that, are very, very enticing in this league. And I believe he's just entering year 4. So they didn't RFA tender him. And then he went ahead and signed. And I guess obviously the Ravens did not match or didn't have the right to match, what he was signed for.
Yes. Chris Westry. I think that,
did I call him something else?
No. Okay. I have to take my time with his name because I get W'd in there. Chris West. So okay. Yes, Chris Westry, definitely an athlete. And, I think that in a system that doesn't ask so much from their corners, he'll be fine. What is he in Dallas now or something? I think I have to look that up, but yes, I think Panthers. So there you go. So yeah, he'll have a chance down there with an aggressive young defense to fit right in. So Ken, final thoughts. I just want to ask you about the cornerback room as a whole, the depth. Obviously it's just a sore spot for us Ravens fans. We've seen this, all the way back to 2014 come back and bite us. Last year, obviously, was just a tough year all the way around. So depth is so important. How do you feel about this group from both a high-end perspective, top end? Like, well, Marlon Humphrey, is he going to be back in the form? Marcus Peters, is he going to be back in the form? And then also the depth of it. Like, how do you feel about the top end of our performance? How do you feel about the depth of the unit?
All right, let me start by saying I think the safeties, and particularly if Clark is still around, but even if he isn't, are so deep that they're going to take up a lot of the snaps that might otherwise go to corner. I think the Ravens are going to be a tremendously predominant big nickel team. They'll play it all the time when the opponents are in 12, is my prediction. And I think they'll play it a lot when other teams are in 11 with a big receiver on the field that's slower. And I think they can move around a player like Clark or even Hamilton to cover that guy outside or inside if they like that matchup. Kelvin Benjamin, that type of player who is mostly about the size. Plexico Burress might have been a guy years ago that would have fallen into that category. But anyway, but a bigger, kind of a little bit slower wide receiver. I think the Ravens match up very well with the safeties they have in the slot. In terms of the cornerbacks, that's going to leave fewer total snaps available there for them, and I think that's a good thing. I think this unit is not exceptionally deep. We have to be concerned about who Peters is going to be right out of the gate for multiple reasons. One is he's coming back from an injury, and two is he's been off the field for a long time now, and we're not 100% sure of who he's going to be when he returns. So it's not just a matter of what's the injury. It's a matter of Father Time should be starting to catch up with Marcus Peters in terms of how his skills may have eroded, in the time since. And I still love the guy. I still hope he's the gambling savant that he has been in his time with the Ravens, and again turns in another season like 2019 or 2020 in terms of really being on top of things. But I can't expect it for sure. And I think the Ravens will wait to extend him until they're very sure about where he is. Humphrey, I have no concern about his comeback. I think he'll be fine. I think he returned to a level of play more like what we saw the previous 3 or 4 seasons with him. So I'm really not concerned at all about that. The key thing for him is keeping him on the outside. The natural amount of big nickel Ravens will play, more Humphrey on the outside. That's good. I don't think Fuller gives the Ravens much in terms of depth. I think I've been pretty clear about that on this show. And when you start with that and you're paying a veteran $3 million who you probably would rather not see on the field, then I think that's probably a bad thing. And maybe the Ravens can figure out how to get more out of him than Denver did. But Fangio's supposed to be one of these coaches that can figure things out like that, and he couldn't. He couldn't figure out how to get much out of him last year. So that's a shame. And this may be his final stop in the NFL if it doesn't work out for him this year when he gets an opportunity.
Well, let's hope you're wrong on Fuller. Let's hope you're wrong, because he would help. Like the Kyle Fuller of 2020 and 2019 would be a really helpful player on this team, Ken. So let's just hope that last year was an off year and Fuller can come back. Baltimore kid, renewed. Hey, maybe he got a lot of things can happen personality wise. You get too comfortable. Maybe. Yeah, I don't want to read into maybe he got into bad habits or try to play Dr. Phil over here. But yeah, you never know. You never know that both him and Peters are starting to fight Father Time, but they're both very crafty cornerbacks. So you hope you can get something out of that left cornerback position. And then we talked about the young guys tonight with Armour-Davis, a ton of physical talent. Damarion Williams, just a really good football player, as well as Ardarius Washington. Like I said, great football player, just limited athletically. And then, of course, Kevon Seymour to patch it up. So, Ken, any last thoughts that you wanted to build on that before I close this out?
The only thing I want to say about Fuller is it's really been since 2018 that he was a great player. He made a Pro Bowl still in 2019. A year late, riding on the nice wave into shore of the view on him. But it was in 18. I think he led the NFL in passes defensed, or maybe it was even 17. He did that because they were both good years. It looks like 18. He had more passes defense in 2017. He had 22. He had 21 in 2018, which led the NFL. Had 7 picks that year, and since then his career's been kind of ski sloping down. Not the player certainly that he was, and hopefully I'm wrong about it. Hopefully it's not just the glass is half full way to look at Kyle Fuller, is that the change in scenery and the new scheme, there's a way to fit him into the Ravens that is different from the way he was in his last couple of years in Chicago and the 1 year in Denver.
There you go, Ken. So thank you so much for all your insight on these players. Wrapping up the series right here. I just wanted to add that this series has been a lot of fun, just doing another round with the flock. And here we are, Ken, by the time that this goes on the air, less than a month from training camp. So this will be my time to take a little bit of a step back. I've been looking at games just from a fan's perspective, Ken. I've been going back and watching some games, just the TV copy and getting the flow and just trying to, take a break off from analyzing everything and just trying to enjoy football. We have some good baseball going on here in Baltimore. So it'll be a little bit of a slow month on the channel. I'm just trying to tell everybody out there, Of course, we'll be keeping up with anything if any kind of news breaks. But it's time to get ready for some football, Ken, as they say on Monday Night Football. Are you ready for some football? I think we're all about ready for some football here, Ken.
Absolutely. Yeah. Can't wait. Loving the baseball too, by the way. It's 6:28 right today. I don't know. It's 12 a.m. right now. So I don't know whether that's still 6:28 or it's 6:29, but it's on 6:28. Gunnar Henderson just hit for the cycle tonight at AAA in 4 at-bats, just like Hayes in 6 innings. So very exciting where the Orioles are headed. And that's taking up a little bit of my time right now to watch a ton of minor league baseball, but I'm really enjoying all the talk with the flock too this off season in terms of the expectation shows and the other things too.
See, baseball here on Huddled Up Films. I mean, we do it all, Ken. We do it all on this channel, my friend. So with that, I'd like to say thank you to my football family. Love my football family. Please check out Ken's work. His links will be below. And Ken, with that, it's our time. Say goodbye to the people. Say your piece here at the end.
Thanks, folks. Always a pleasure to be on with you, Jason. Take it easy.
Thank you.